Hey everyone, welcome to Sunday Coffee. Did you everyone grab your coffee? I got mine, third cup. Ugh, it's cold here in New Hampshire where I live. We just had like about, I don't know, 5 inches of snow. We're supposed to get like 20 feet tomorrow, tonight. It's beautiful outside. It's very lovely. I hope it's nice where you guys are. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit early, so I thought we'd hang out. If anyone is here, say hi in the chat. All right. Well, as we jump in, I wanted to welcome you guys all to Sunday Coffee. We are in step 3 of the roadmap, and this is really about healing versus fixing. And today's topic is how healing isn't about being good. So it's pretty juicy what we're going to be jumping into. So, first and foremost, I do lose my place, so I wrote down some notes. Yay. And I wanted to call back to the last Hokey Pokey, the last Sunday Coffee that I did, which talked about the Hokey Pokey. And I'll put the link in the show notes. But in that episode, we talked about how we're trying to expand our capacity. We are not meant to live in kind of weight stigma or grief or guilt. But what we do is we touch into it and we pull back out. And as we touch in, we're actually increasing our capacity. But in the beginning, we just really, when you hear about diet culture and you hear kind of all that stuff, and you're like, I really want to untangle that, we have a tendency to kind of Geronimo. We just cannonball right in, and you're not meant to live there. So that part is really what I'm trying to get at in the hokey pokey. And what happens is when we try to untangle weight stigma and we're really understanding diet culture, um, it's heavy. It's really heavy. And so sometimes we pull on that thread and it actually tightens the knot. So when we talk about kind of doing the hokey pokey, we're not trying to cannonball in. We're just trying to touch in, pull back out, touch in, pull back out. And a lot of times when we do that, we start understanding that weight stigma has tied our food and eating choices to our self-worth. So I'm good if I eat X, I'm bad if I eat Y. And that it's unintended, but yet that's kind of how it lands. And so the idea here is that I really wanted to unpack is really understanding how um, that can happen and maybe the challenges of letting that go. Um, and the challenge, of course, is that if I start eating foods that I've labeled bad, aren't I bad? And that's really kind of landing. If I stop thinking that my self-worth is tied to my weight, then what is my self-worth about? Like, how do I do that? And so again, we're talking about that force of familiar. It's familiar to think a specific way, and so it pulls you back to thinking that way. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to break that force of familiar, and we'll kind of go through how we do that. Um, if you guys are interested, I talk a lot more about nutrition in the Nutrition 101 program. That's that mini course, 5-part. It's part of your paid subscription. I'm also going to kind of give a shout out to our other mini course, which is called Sweet Bodies, and that really dives in deep into the force of familiar. So there we go. So today's thread, which is tangled up in this knot of weight stigma, is really understanding how our food and eating choices aren't about being good. Okay. So let's begin with kind of digging a little bit deeper is that when we talk about our choices, so why am I making this choice? If we think about it because I want to be good, that's one reason. Okay. But there's always a mixed bag. It's like we always have lots of reasons why we do things. And when we think about trying to be good, I think a lot of times what we're doing is we're using information and we've moralized that. So, good people make the right choice. And that kind of is a very slippery slope. And I want to pull us back from all of that. So, on one hand, there's internal information. So, information that only you have access to. And that would be things like cravings or likes or dislikes, like my coffee right now. You guys don't know how much I love coffee. I'm the only one who knows, and the people that live with me. Mm, I also like tea too. Um, but that would be internal information. And you don't know how I take my coffee. That would be internal information. External information would be like, oh, you know, how much caffeine is in coffee or, I don't know, calories or time of day or those kinds of things. But that's information anyone could have access to. So internal informations, likes, dislikes, cravings, preferences, memories, associations, and external information like calories, macronutrients, time of day, portion size, but things other people could see or other people could learn about without you telling them. And when we recognize that there are these two forces at play, and we recognize that both are always at play. Now we're starting to understand this idea of, well, why am I making that choice? What percent is internal? What percent is external? So we're kind of looking at that. And when you understand your why, oh, I'm eating this because I don't want the food to go to waste. Um, Now we're going to kind of dive in. We said, okay, I understand why I'm making this food choice. Now I want to understand the nutrition. And this is really getting to this idea of macronutrients. So macronutrients, just a little quick recap. Macronutrients contain calories. There are four macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, fats, and alcohol. I'm not really going to be talking about alcohol over here, so just be aware of that. And the carbohydrates, fats, and protein are where we get energy. So that's where energy is in food. And when we talk about macronutrients, we're talking about the parts of foods that contain calories. So energy is measured in calories, like a BTU or a kilowatt. And when we talk about macronutrients, kind of back in the 90s and the 2000s, people were just really restricting their calories and their diet was very unbalanced. So, kind of the nutrition community said, let's talk about macronutrients instead of calories. And that's where this idea of balancing your macros, getting enough protein, getting enough carbohydrates, getting enough fat in your diet, and maybe thinking about getting those at each meal or each feeding, because the more balanced those macronutrients are, the less it impacts our blood sugar and the more satiety that we're likely to feel. Now, micronutrients don't have any calories. I know, really. And in general, I'm going to describe four micronutrients. So the micronutrients are water and fiber and vitamins and minerals. Now, a little tiny distinction. Fiber actually is a carbohydrate, but because we can't digest it, we can't actually get any calories from it. So that's why I put it under the micronutrients. And what micronutrients do is they support our body. They help us prevent disease and they help us go to the bathroom. I know, when we talk about helps our body function, that's a polite way of saying peeing and pooing. And so again, if we think about it, our macronutrients have to provide us with our micronutrients. So whatever you eat over here has to provide you with your micronutrients. And micronutrients, again, they help us pee and poo and they help us prevent disease in the future. And so if we give it an example like white bread versus wheat bread has more of what? Oh, yeah, fiber, more micronutrients. Iceberg lettuce versus spinach. Calories, they're the same, but spinach has more micronutrients. White potato, sweet potato, calories, they're the same. Sweet potato has more micronutrients. So that's one of those things that I just try to highlight for people because I think it's confusing. We think that eating a sweet potato is being good. And it's not being good. It's just giving your body micronutrients. We think, "Oh, well, having iceberg lettuce is bad." It's not bad, it's crunchy. It just gives our body more micronutrients. And, I have a diagram, and I'll put that in the show notes so you and this whole idea of, like, being good, that's really coming from diet culture. Diet culture assigns this morality to food and eating choices, and that's really where our self-worth kinda gets tied to what's on our plate. And when we think about that, decoupling this idea that I'm good because I chose spinach or I'm bad because I chose iceberg lettuce, that's what we're asking you to start doing. It's starting to decouple how our food choices are now giving us a morality. And instead, we're just trying to get curious, like, does this choice support me? Or how is this choice supporting me? And as we start thinking about that, you might say, like, how is this supporting, my body? And a lot of times when we think about it, when we eat maybe an unbalanced diet and it has maybe more carbohydrates than fats or protein, our blood sugars go up and that can make us feel really tired. So the reason why we eat is to give our body energy. And now, because of the macronutrients out of balance, we don't really have that energy. So it didn't really do what we wanted it to do. And when we turn around, we say, well, I got the energy, but I didn't actually help my body function and I didn't actually help my body prevent disease. Now we're turning around and we're centering on the body's needs. What does my body need? It needs energy. It needs to pee and poo. It needs to prevent disease. Like it needs those things. And that's really kind of what we're trying to get at. So, every choice that we make is a mixed bag. It isn't always one or the other. And I always like to tell people it's like a pie chart. You know, our whys are complex. They're not simplistic. And when we start thinking about that internal, that hunger, craving, mood, maybe just like, the sound of food, somebody might be eating popcorn or something. And then the external is all the nutrition knowledge you have. And most of my clients have quite a bit of nutrition knowledge. So you're turning around saying, like, oh, well, what do I know about this food? Or how do I know it can balance me? And the idea here isn't to be perfect. The idea is just to pause and kind of check in and say, what do I want? That's the internal. What do I need? That's asking about our physical needs. And what do I have? Kind of what's reasonable. And those three questions, Dr. Michelle May wrote about those in her book, Am I Hungry? And for those of you who don't know, Dr. May and I teamed up together and we wrote Am I Hungry? For diabetes. So there's that book, which kind of goes over a lot of basics as well. So breaking that force of familiar is really key. And when we talk about the force of familiar, whatever you've done in the past is going to pull you back. So if I've moralized food, if I thought I was good because I ate spinach, it's pulling you back. It's pulling you back to think I'm a good person because I ate X. And that is the force of familiar. It's going to pull you back to what you've done. And so it takes curiosity to cut those threads, to cut the force of familiar. And that's what we're doing right now is we're using curiosity to cut the threads that are familiar, our familiar thinking. Now, a lot of times people say to me, this is a little tricky, Megrette. And it is. And I've talked about this in a lot more detail in the mini course Sweet Bodies, which as paid subscribers, you also get access to, which is very nice. And again, I'll put show notes in there. So kind of to wrap up and close, healing is not about being good. Um, there's not right foods and wrong foods. There's not a right plan. You're not earning points. You're not earning, value. You, as you are right now, belong. You have value at any size, regardless of your food choices. And really understanding that is part of healing. And also turning around and saying, like, part of healing is giving my body what it needs. And that's really understanding your body needs, and that pause comes in. So, one of the things that I think happens a lot when we talk about food and eating choices is this knot. We're starting to kind of get to the nod of stigma. And when we talk about food and eating choices, a lot of foods are forbidden, and that's that knot of stigma. They're not forbidden because they make any sense. They're just foods you've decided I'm not going to eat that because they're bad. And this is part of this invitation. You're not good, you're not bad. We're just making food choices, and we're trying to make choices that nourish and heal our body. And ultimately what we're trying to get to is that sense of self-care. And for a lot of people, once you make that connection, like, oh, I know why I'm making this choice. I made a choice that gave my body energy. I made a choice that, really supported my body and helped it function or helped it prevent disease. And I've got this sense of self care that can feel really powerful. It can kind of make us a little giddy. And it actually fuels our food choices. It actually creates this system where that sense of self-care really helps us make food and eating choices that keep filling that sense of self-care. And sometimes those choices are meeting our needs, our internal needs, like cravings and desires. And sometimes they're just meeting our fiber, our protein, or, helping us balance out a meal. Not a right or wrong, but it's a deep sense of self care, which again, we're trying to connect with. Again, um, shout out. So, paid members like you get access to the 101, Nutrition 101, and Sweet Body. So, that's included. And I'll link those to the show notes. And yeah, reach out. You can always message me if you have any questions, start a chat, whatever. I'm here. I hope you guys have a great week. Go gently into your week and take care, everyone.